Hi, welcome to the 16th episode of the Slava Heroyam podcast. I am here for the first time with two friends of the channel, Ben Cook and Charlie Morris. They've both been on previous episodes, but I figured we could work together to figure out some of the strange goings on and also talk about an awareness campaign going on this weekend. Charlie and Ben, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, good. All right, and we got a thumbs up from Charlie. Charlie is a filmmaker and documentarian who runs two podcasts of his own, and Ben Cook is researching Ukraine on Substack, one of the leading channels on Substack, and has been heavily involved in the Ukrainian Assistance Organization, which he co-founded. Just as a reminder of who these two gentlemen are. You guys are meeting for the first time today, so we had a chance to talk a little bit earlier and do a pregame huddle. But what the common thread that you've both had is help with relief organizations. So Charlie, I know you're not heavily involved at the moment in that, but go ahead and reintroduce yourselves at how you got introduced in some of those humanitarian aid for Ukraine projects that you were involved in.
So I spent about a year being a volunteer based here in the USA for an aid group called Paracrew Humanitarian Aid, run by Linda Stranden. She's from Norway, and her organization delivers aid into different parts of Ukraine, probably a lot like Benjamin's group does. And I could see that their posting was sort of somewhat irregular, and I reached out to them. And she said, yes, we could use a social media manager. So I did that. So basically her drivers, supply folks would send me content from them being out, like after they had left an area. Then they would send me videos and footage from their time there. And then I would package it and put it into fundraiser videos to help them pay for gasoline costs, or as they say, petrol.
Petrol.
Petrol. And so that was really satisfying work. And I really enjoyed it. And through them, that's how I found out about a lot of other Ukrainian aid groups, because often they would interface with another aid group that would then take the supplies to somewhere else or other areas. And then I was just like, wow, there's this whole network of these tiny little aid groups that are having a really big impact in these small villages that never made the news, and a lot of people that really need help. So it was a big eye opener for me.
Yeah, and I want to talk about one of those networks, which some of these networks have an organization that helps coalesce them all, like Blue Check, who is the kind of the networker for your organization, right, Ben? Is that correct? So they're the networking hub, and then
they're our main source. They're our most reliable source of grant money. And so anybody who's ever started NGO or humanitarian foundation or charity knows that you can't get a grant until you get a grant. And what that duality means is that nobody's going to trust you until somebody trusts you. And then they can see that you are, in the business. So Blue Check does things differently. They do spend a lot of time doing background on the founders and owners and people like that to make sure that money's not being wasted or stolen. So when others see that you're working with Blue Check, that is definitely a feather in your cap.
Okay. Awesome. And it's also so if you're a listener,
that's Liev Schreiber, the actor Liev Schreiber. That's his organization.
So right.
Yeah.
And so I've covered them before. I've covered Blue Check before on this channel, but the QR code and the banner that is showing right now is giveuao.org. Each in your individual episodes, we covered your organizations, but today, but I do want to show. Well, let's see. How do we do this? Our main topic for today is Kherson, a city being destroyed by a war crime called the human safari. And what a human safari is if you're joining this channel first time, when this is your first episode watching, I talk about it a lot, but it's essentially Russian drone operators hunt civilians. And we're talking about first-person view drones, small ones that you can buy at Target or anywhere. You just attach a grenade or an explosive to those, and you fly them at a car. Cars are some of their favorite targets, but they'll target anyone they can find out in the open. So UAO has finally got back into Kherson, as I understand. Is there something that happened that that allowed you guys to get back in there? Because I've been talking about it before. It was kind of because of the human safari, it was cut off from pretty much everyone.
Yeah, they stopped letting us in for a long time into Kherson. I don't know. I have asked that question, but it wasn't answered. I was talking to Mike, and we were talking about one of those things where you're chatting and you're talking about 6 things, and one of them gets missed, and that was the one that got missed. Is why they were allowed back into Kherson. So I don't know the reason, but I do know that location is on the river, so it is at the front. And
right,
generally speaking, we don't do red zone work, but that is definitely what I would consider red zone work.
Yeah,
right. And Kherson needs it, and I'll give you my theory of why you're able to get back in there in just a moment, and that'll lead into how people can help with the human safari. But first, we need people to know what it is, and in order to do that, the QR code in the top left right now takes you to humansafari.org, and at humansafari.org you'll find a list of worldwide events, and there's several going on in the United States this weekend, both Saturday and Sunday. Usually the city is doing both days. Some cities are doing screenings, some are just doing a rally to let people know about this particular war crime. All villages along the front are impacted by it, but as we'll see from an individual who works in the Ukrainian assistance organization, you'll see what the city is slowly turning into. And like Bakhmut and Avdiivka, Kherson was a city of nearly 400,000 people, with only 60,000 staunchly remaining to defend their city and their way of life just by living there. But it's deteriorating slowly over time because of these attacks, which we know about, not because of any intelligence work or independent journalism, but because of the Russians post and brag about it on social media, Telegram in particular. So the go to the website, check it out. There's events in Dallas, Fort Worth, where I am, but also Denver, LA, San Francisco. Let's see. That's what I was trying to do, is share some of the actual website. I need to. The hardest thing to do with this podcast system is to share the screen correctly. Okay, share, because now I have to share it, and now I have to add it to the stage. There we go. Okay, so here is the actual website, December 13th and 14th.
Humans are not targets. I like that.
Yep. So United Kingdom. Here I'm just scrolling through all these cities.
That's great.
Cities and screenings. And here are now the resources. The key resources are what's going to stay the same after this weekend, and anybody can go to it. There's a link to articles, firsthand testimony. One thing, Truth Hands report, but Kherson Human Safari is a documentary that everyone should see, and it is going to be part of a trilogy. Zarina tells me tentatively. Zarina Zabriskie is the director of it. Right now, the documentary covers from the initial invasion all the way up to about March 2025. But the attacks have increased like exponentially since that time. So she's had to go back and cover more. Let's take a look real quick at a recent report from the Kherson Oblast, which, if you aren't all that familiar with Ukraine, an oblast is kind of like a state, but they like to name their states after the main city of the area. And so in the news, you hear about Donetsk and Luhansk a lot. Those are the eastern oblasts. Kherson is right along the Dnieper River in the southeast. It doesn't share a border with Russia, but it does have some oceanfront property as well. But we're talking about along the border where the fighting is, right on the Dnieper River. And I need to switch this screen share to share this tab instead. There we go. Okay. And this has some audio, so we'll listen for a second. Okay.
Ukraine Assistance Organization.
So she's showing, that's a little bit of the outlying area of Kherson. But I can, let me.
So Benjamin, those are one of your folks?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. She's, I'm not familiar with her. I have not met her, but she may be part of a local aid organization that's working with us.
Okay.
Or she may be a new hire or something like that. Michael and I, we're just the pretty faces. Lisa and Anastasia, a different Lisa and Anastasia, two local Ukrainian women. They run the day-to-day, and they are absolutely amazing. They, it used to be Michael was running the day-to-day, but then, it just took off and just required so much work. He had to get help. And then they, you have a good employee when they just take over.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. They just like, okay, get out of the way. You're slowing us down. We're going to take over.
So here's some pictures from Zarina very recently of Kherson.
There's a drone.
You'll see the drones flying overhead. This is someone telling her story. It'll re-loop here in a second. I'm going to leave it on. But one organization that has made a difference for getting into Kherson has been the Sunflower Seeds for Ukraine. And that's where people can donate to help. It's one thing that they provide is anti-drone safety nets. And when I go back to showing you pictures of Kherson, you'll see these nets placed all over the city, but also on the roads leading in and out of the city for several miles. That has helped to protect the city, but it hasn't been foolproof for a lot of reasons. There's constant artillery strikes to take those down too. A lot of sabotage. They'll of course use drones to blow up the nets, and then make them have to put them back up, and then attack the crews that are doing that. So what people need is drone detectors. And right. I think this same video has some pictures of drone detectors, so I'll go back to it. So there's Kherson. There's a drone detector. You can get those as civilians. They like to attack cars, as I said. This is Zarina Zabriskie. You'll see all kinds of ways in the documentary. That's a piece of shrapnel. There's where an explosion. That's not just a pothole. That's an exploded hole where someone was walking. And yeah, the whole city kind of looks like this, marketplaces. So you saw this one before, and I wonder if I can go. She has, it's maternity hospital. So they go after hospitals. Can I make this bigger? Probably not. That's one thing about sharing the Instagram through a computer is that it often don't get to manipulate the size of that very well. But what I'll do is, in the edited version of this, I'll just edit that to blow that up a little more. But so that's a good amount on that war crime. And of course, there's other war crimes going on. Everybody is usually told about the cruise missiles and the long range drones and the kidnapping of kids. But what else have I missed? There's torture of prisoners.
Can I add something?
Yes.
You mean specifically in Kherson?
Yeah.
I know. I think sometimes there's so much focus, and rightfully so, about the human safari aspect that sometimes people also overlook the fact that they're also getting hit daily by KABs and Shaheeds, missiles, and even tank fire. I think safely they probably get shelled by at least 100 shells a day. It's just constant. So the drones are definitely a horrifying aspect of it, because that's so personal. You've got a human looking at a screen going, oh, there's a lady with groceries. I'm going to try to kill her. But then even beyond that, they're just getting bombed all day long. And so it's just really.
And I want to talk a little history, and maybe you guys are familiar, but it's because it's history that I've learned recently through my studies. But so without getting too far into the history of Russia and Ukraine, you wonder, why does Russia in particular behave this way? They've done it in every war where they kind of have a scorched earth policy. If they lose, they want to burn everything behind them. If they're winning, they destroy everything in their path. That comes from they can be compared to an abusive child who had an abusive father, or a child who had an abusive father or mother and grew up to become the same way. When Russia was young, they were conquered by the Mongols, and that is exactly how the Mongols treated people. Then the Khans had a scorched earth policy, and as many history students may know, were not very friendly to those that they captured. And the only relief Russia had was when the Khans would fight amongst themselves. Ukraine, who's a different people in a lot of ways, in so many ways that distinguishes them, grew up with different conquerors. They were conquered by the Poles. Now, Ukraine developed, in order to survive, a democratic society of mercenaries called Cossacks. And that's where you'll get a lot of Ukrainian cultural references, because they're very proud of that free warrior society, and who Russia, for a time, tricked into working for them. They said, come work with us, and you'll get all the benefits, and we'll protect you from essentially the Poles, but also the Swedes. And this whole area, this breadbasket, is where the Ukrainians grew up as a people and came together. But they were originally, the Rus were part of them. The Rus established Kyiv, and that's what Putin tries to use to claim Ukrainian, heritage in his revised history. But the original Rus became the Cossacks and the Ukrainians, and then the Muscovites stole the name Rus in order to make them sound like the original founders of the area. And so they not only, steal land and people, but they tried to steal heritage, and they continue to do that by trying to kidnap kids and turn them into soldiers for their own cause. And the teenagers, they do that too. The younger ones, they send to families further into Moscow and that kind of thing. They're hard to find. So that's a different war crimes that are all related, and even some of the international situations and I wanted to touch briefly on the Venezuela situation, because there has been concerns about the type of Shahed type drones going to Venezuela. You've been studying that a little bit, Ben? Can you comment on it?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't take much for that to happen. Wherever there's a conflict and a place for Russia to be in conflict with the U.S., they will go there. Whether it's Syria, Africa, Ukraine, Russia's whole excuse for going to war in Ukraine is for it to be a proxy war with the West. When people in the U.S. were talking about, like Dan Crenshaw, we're talking about a more active role of the U.S. military against Mexican cartels. I'm not saying yes or no to that. My caution was, just know that Russia will immediately show up and start fighting us via the cartels. And that's exactly what's happened to Venezuela, and will continue to happen. Everywhere we go, our adversary will be backed by Russia. That's just a guarantee. And to an extent, China as well, as much as they can be part of it. And so, yeah, it wouldn't be surprising if they had a bunch of Shaheeds, or at least a technology transfer, so that Venezuela, which is the more dangerous version, by the way. The least dangerous version is just to show up with a cargo shipload of Shaheeds. The most dangerous version is a technology transfer, where Venezuela can make its own. So yeah, that could be it. And they, also just general advice on how to ISR over U.S. ships. So the information transfer is the scary part.
Yeah, and the information transfer is scary, but it's the overall goal here with war crimes and making sure Venezuela is an adversary for us, which sort of our own politics is in the games that our current leaders are playing, is bringing more attention to it. And so, wherever, as you said, wherever we're getting involved, Russia's going to get involved too, in an opposite force capacity. But the goal there is downfall of democracy and rise of autocracies through post-truth, through making the threat that Americans are concerned about is drugs. But really the destabilization of it is between neighbors again, there between Venezuela and Colombia. That's why you wonder, why are we striking boats so far from the U.S. in international waters? Part of that whole deal is that is meant to keep the region destabilized
under the guise of stabilization.
Yes.
Under the guise of the Monroe Doctrine of stabilizing that region and keeping Russia and China out of that region. So Trump's idea of keeping Russia out of the region is to make sure that they go into the region. So
yes, pretty much. and again, that could be a whole topic on that. But when you have one country that can be a bully and perform war crimes over and over on this huge of a scale, and the what is really needed to stop it is not negotiation, but I'll always push for a no-fly zone first, even if it's a no-fly corridor that would prevent a lot of the Shahed drone attacks. And Europe could also argue so that this stuff doesn't accidentally flow over into our border nations of Poland and Romania and Lithuania and Estonia.
So you don't accidentally have 19 Shahed style drones accidentally go into Poland.
Yes, and so our channels on Substack have been very active in talking about how to stop that. But when you don't stop it, it starts to flow over into other countries that feel like those tactics will also work for them. Mm-hmm. So that's all we'll say on that. So let's stop.
I wanted to bring up. You mentioned war crimes in Venezuela, and obviously we need to discuss the elephant in the room. And this is not politics saying yes, it was a war crime. No, it wasn't a war crime for Hegzeth or the U.S. military to strike that boat twice. The second strike isn't in question. That's understood. But what's interesting in the context of the human safari is the attention that everyone is paying to a single possible war crime versus the thousands that go on a week in Ukraine. And I don't think that's hyperbole, me saying thousands a week, because every time Russia strikes Ukraine or sends a drone over into the civilian parts of Ukraine, that is a war crime.
Yes.
It's also, genocidal. So, there's two things going on. The kidnapping of the kids is obviously meets the definition of genocide, targeting of Ukrainian civilian structures, apartment buildings, things like that. When you back that with the rhetoric coming from the government and the government-run media, that is also genocide, and it's also a war crime. It's both.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
It's interesting that so much ink is being spilled right now about the possible one war crime that happened between the U.S. and Venezuela. Versus the thousands that go on daily. Not that countries haven't, or the media hasn't covered it. I understand why they don't cover it every day, because it doesn't get the clicks. But it is interesting. So, and the other thing I want to point out is the bias that happens to a lot of people, to almost all of us actually. You just have to understand that was your bias, and then work against it. Is that when horrible things happen to people, your natural first reaction is the just world bias, in that if something absolutely horrible happened to somebody, it's more comfortable for you psychologically to say, well, they must have deserved it in some way.
Yeah.
And
you
so
see that
Ukraine has suffered from that bias a lot.
You see that all the time. With even with a wrongful arrest sometimes, like I don't want to get too closely into domestic politics, but everybody has seen somebody, not even in recent years, but in decades past, somebody gets arrested wrongly, handled roughly wrongly by police officers, and you assume that person must have done something wrong, must have resisted, must have done something that the police officers felt was dangerous. And that's not always the case either. Sometimes people just are addicted to the power they get, and they forget how they should behave. And so that happens to people. It happens to countries. But
it's a natural bias we all have. It's no one is immune to it. The only thing you can do is know that you have that bias, and then look for it when it pops up and try to suppress it and work around it. Which that takes effort, and who likes to give effort?
Yes. So that leads. I talked about here's the thing that you wonder about how your bias is affecting, because you wonder, my bias is Russian military isn't very good, but I want to share here. Let's see. I lost the videos of it, but real quick, I want to get into our next topic is speaking of Russian military and Russian politics and ships being blown up. I want to talk about the Russian Shadow Fleet. But first, I didn't mention to you this, Ben, but when in our pregame, but I mentioned it to Charlie. Russian soldiers are behaving kind of weird when they're confronted with drones, aren't they?
Yeah, they've been the either explicit training or tacit training or whatever you want to say has gone from if you see a drone, you're going to die, possibly horribly. It would be better if you took your own life so you didn't die horribly, to just freeze and maybe they'll pass you by. That seems to be the new training, is just freeze. I think not because it's effective, but because the from what became known as Putin's last kiss, which was the rash of Russian suicides that were on video, was just bad. So they had to come up with something else to tell the troops, some more cope. If you've ever heard the term a cope cage, that's just something to get you to go into battle. This will protect you. This talisman, this charm repels the enemy's bullets, that sort of thing. And so the new thing is you just freeze.
Like this guy.
Yeah, that guy, that's my favorite Russian, not just because he's a dead Russian, but because he brought his bottle of vodka into battle with him because he knew what was going to go down. He was going to go down drinking if he was going to go down. I was surprised by that photo because it's a recent photo. I thought they had long since cleared out all the prisoners and drunks and malcontents from the city streets, because those were some of the first people to die in Bakhmut, were all the malcontents and hobos and drunks and winos, or whatever you want to call them. Russia rounded all those up early. I guess they missed a couple, and this guy was able to hold out and at least get a bunch of money for his family.
Yeah, and I've seen them still committing suicide, but the ones that commit suicide are there. For example, there is a group of soldiers and they got hit by a drone, and the guy was wounded, but he was the only one left alive. And instead of trying to fight through his wound, which was to his ankle, I think, maybe his foot got blown off, instead of putting a tourniquet and trying to fight to live, he just killed himself.
Because he knows nobody's coming to help him. Russia, depending on where you are and what's going on, you may have a chance to be medevaced on the Russian side. Ukraine tries as much as they can. Because of drones, it's even extremely difficult for Ukraine to medevac. I mean, there are people who have waited weeks who are injured to be medevaced on the Ukrainian side, but just because of the drone situation. I mean, we've all seen videos of the MRAP vehicles coming in to bring supplies to take out the wounded, just getting pelted constantly by drones. And it just depends on how lucky the drone is and what kind of munition they are, on how well the MRAP will survive it. It's pure luck.
And to those of us who are trying to get humanitarian aid to both civilians and soldiers, and even to have like this organization that we wanted to talk about, that's a good segue. Is so maybe you can tell us a little bit about Project Kherson, Charlie. We're willing to just send anybody we can to rescue soldiers or frontline people. Can you tell us about Project Kherson, Charlie?
Sure. Sorry, I thought the screen froze up for a second there.
Oh.
Yeah, Project Kherson. So one of the original founders was Peter Fouché. And when Peter was still alive, before he was killed in the line of his work there, they were doing combat medevac stuff specifically. And you can still, if you kind of scroll through back to their social media, you can see all the stuff Peter was doing. But sure, he would deliver aid, but then it was also tons of medevac stuff. And like if you go to their memorial page, probably under the About link, you can see 2 of their major people have been killed while doing the work that they were doing of their founders. And so after Peter died, they sort of reorganized. And now Jana from South Africa, she helps run it from South Africa. And then Hannah, or Helena, up at the top there, they decided to focus on just doing what they do now, which is, delivering aid and doing all sorts of different things.
I think Helena was who you were telling me about before.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also what's really cool about Helena also is kind of as a side thing, she does a lot of like mental health counseling for soldiers and survivors of war. So it's just a really great program. And
here's the memoriam.
That's the memoriam. Okay, yeah.
There we go, Peter.
Yeah, there's Peter, yeah. And he was a very unusual, just super charismatic, passionate guy. But yeah, so there's 2 of their directors have been killed while doing the work.
British citizen.
Yeah. So
Constantine. So there's 3. keep talking about them. I'm going to switch from the website to
their social media. Sorry, I didn't know what you were about to say there. But yeah, if you look at their social media, they're pretty good about posting new things and what they're up to and things like that.
Are we all three on here? This covers up Ben. Sorry, Ben.
And
yeah. Like, I don't know how to move Ben out of the way. Maybe we can.
It's okay. People will
there
survive without me for a little while.
Sorry. This picture is we've really hit our stride just like we planned it. But these are all folks that are frontline evacuators and humanitarian aid folks that have been struck down trying to do that job. So I always try to do a memoriam section every podcast. The three in particular you mentioned, but also all of these folks. I mean, there's a gentleman on LinkedIn who really catalogs all the folks that perish both in all the war crime attacks, but also folks like this. His name, if you want to follow him, and I don't know why he's only on LinkedIn. I haven't found him anywhere else. But let's see, I should have been more prepared with that. Maybe I can find it by the end of the podcast, or if I don't, I'll put a link to his LinkedIn. He is a Polish citizen that is cataloging all of this. But he keeps track of every victim.
Wow.
And that's where I'm getting this picture from. So
he keeps track of all the foreign aid volunteers, basically.
Well, he's been keeping track of every civilian, every foreigner fighting, every foreign soldier, but every citizen that Ukraine announces gets killed by a drone strike or in the human safari. He catalogs them all, but he doesn't. He just he finds, he makes a post every day about it. He doesn't have like a spreadsheet or anything, but this is one of his posts, and it is shared in Ukrainian there. He probably got it from a Ukrainian source, but these are all frontline rescue workers, just like the three that were in memoriam earlier. So I didn't bring I actually bought a bottle of Ukrainian wine. I should have brought it out here with me. But in Dallas, Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce, and maybe at our event in Dallas, we can there we go.
There I am.
We can auction what we have. The Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce has a case of champagne. For people that don't know, Bakhmut, before it was destroyed, was Ukraine's champagne center. And now it's gone. But Ukrainian soldiers managed to save, several dozen cases of the champagne, and Dallas has one of those cases. So it's very,
amazing.
very, very special champagne. You can get it for a $200 donation to the Ukraine cause. If you watch this podcast or watch the edited version, just let me know, message at my Substack, and we can figure out how to get you a bottle through the Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce here in Dallas. But those are not to be opened until victory. So, because they will never be made the same way again until Bakhmut is rebuilt. So, okay. Now for this business. Here is a nice little video on repeat, if I can remember how to operate my thing of okay, so this is a video on Reddit, and I don't know if you shared this same one, Ben, but yes, of a naval drone attacking the Russian oil tanker, part of their shadow fleet. So these are kind of our other heroes of the week. The first heroes are the ones that go in and help places like Kherson. But I'm doing a double whammy this week because this is really important. I don't know if this is Miners Birds, same connection, but there must be another organization that handles the naval drones. But what is the Russian?
Likely the Ukrainian Navy. Yeah.
Yeah. What is the Russian shadow?
So the SBU also operates these drones as well.
Okay.
Wow.
And they can be fitted. Cool. They can be fitted with. They've tried things and successfully fitted these drones with surface-to-air missiles, or even jury-rigged sidewinders, basically.
Wow.
And attacked Russian aircraft taking off from Crimea. Um,
Can I ask, what's the scale, the size of these drones? Like, are these tiny little things like this big, or are they big enough for a person to sit on? Even though
think
there's
of the biggest Sea-Doo or jet ski you've ever seen, and they're slightly larger than that. Only slightly larger than that. They're a little bit wider than those. But yeah, it's about the size of a extremely large, like a 4-person.
So it's like a wave rider.
The wave runner. Yeah.
Wow, that's what they are. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they're somehow remote controlling them. That is fascinating.
Yeah. So the little device you see on the front of the boats is a Starlink device.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's a mixture of. They're not communicating with just one way. It's a mixture of things. But that's a Starlink device right there on the very front, most likely.
So in this video, they're taking out a Russian oil tanker, and that affects the economy and also the apparatus, right? Like,
so yeah, it does lots of things. So it makes crews not want to crew the vessel, but you can eventually throw enough money at it that everybody will do it. But it makes it more expensive. It makes it impossible to insure. So normal insurers don't insure the vessels. So India, China, and Russia are individually insuring the vessels. So that makes that extremely expensive to do. And it just takes another boat out of the chain of the shadow fleet. The boats aren't in good condition. Ukraine is using as low a charge as possible to keep the Europeans happy and the oil spills down to a minimum. Because it took 2 hits to disable the locomotion of this vessel, and they hit it at least 3 times.
Wow.
But it took 2 hits because Ukraine is using such a small charge, and they're hitting them empty, coming back to Russia to fill back up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So when you say the
Russian, see
Russian,
that the waterline mark between empty and full.
okay.
There's that's the color difference on the side of the hull.
So what is the Russian shadow fleet? I've always wondered what that means.
Well, it's no longer shadow. We know exactly who they are and where they are at almost all. The moment you go into a port, everyone knows where you are. The moment you cross the straits in Turkey, everyone knows where you are and who you are.
Okay.
Ports are highly surveilled, and ports have their own commercial surveillance that everybody agrees to. Like all these people are like this ship was moving without its transponder on, but that in and of itself isn't enough to hide it in the Black Sea. Like in the open ocean, turning your transponder off will be enough to hide you. But as soon as you come into ports, there's surveillance between ships. There's surveillance in the port. Everybody knows who you are and where you are. So number one, it's no longer shadow, but that's what we're going to call it.
Okay.
Number two, it's just old vessels that Russia and China and India have paid for that can't be insured anyway because they're too old and have too many violations. They've just bought these, put crews on them, and none of the crews, almost none of the crews are Russian.
Wow, really?
Even though Russia dominates, like if you look at the percentage of nationalities on crewed vessels, commercial vessels, one of the highest is Russia. One of the second highest, or one of the other highest, used to be Ukrainian. But now most of these people are Indian, Southeast Asian, and that sort of thing. And what's even more interesting is that all of your ports in Russia are also not run by Russians. So if you listen to the chatter, when you remember a couple weeks ago when Ukraine hit one of the ports, and there was chatter between the vessel that was hit and the port authority, neither of those two people were Russian. It's not surprising that the captain on the ship isn't Russian, but the person he was talking to in the port was also not Russian.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is really interesting.
Yeah. It's not odd at all that your what do you call them? Port
harbor
authority,
master?
harbor master. Thank you. Yeah. That your harbor master isn't from the country that the port is in.
Yeah.
And we just had a recent retaliation, quote unquote, to this too.
This happened probably 2.5 hours ago in Odessa. The first reports are it was hit by a ballistic missile, which a ballistic missile coming from Crimea is basically undetectable. If it's a ground launched missile, the time it would take for it to be detected and an alert to go out is shorter than the amount of time it would take to fly its targeted path.
Wow.
This is like a Shaheed or something like that. There is plenty of time to send out an alert.
Yeah. So that's in a Ukrainian port, and it's delivering supplies helpful to Ukraine, and so the Russians allegedly bombed it.
Well, I mean, it could just be grain or normal cargo. It could be full of Ukrainian or bombs and planes and tanks. We don't know, but it's the registration is supposedly, or there's several different things. There's the registration where the ship is registered, and then there's the beneficial party. One of those is Turkish. I don't know if the registration is Turkish or the beneficial party is Turkish. But by the looks of the ship, it's not carrying anything other than commercial goods.
Is it unusual for Russia to target ships in the Odessian port?
No, they do it off and on. They used to do it all the time, and then they slowed down a little bit.
Just to ramp up their attacks on civilians, but
they're doing such a good job with their PR and propaganda. Attacks like this really hurt their PR and propaganda.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's the only reason that they don't do it. Is that you can't hide this. And Turkey is very much on the fence between Russia and NATO/Ukraine, and this doesn't help. Turkey stay on the fence where Russia wants it.
Yeah, would that have been the mistake if they had hit a Turkish ship and didn't mean to?
I mean, Russia's really bad at war, but they're getting better. I would think they know who they are. Eventually, even Russia learns lessons. So, I would think they knew who it was that they were hitting. So the reason they would target them is because Turkey is not happy with Ukraine striking vessels, in the Black Sea. Turkey is very much not happy with that. And to put pressure on NATO to do something, one of the vessels that got hit previously was towed off the coast of Bulgaria, where it would run ashore in Bulgarian waters, and so for Bulgaria to deal with it, and so that's just Turkey's way of playing the game.
Yeah. Wow.
I think let's see. I have a missed call. It wasn't. Who's that from? Just this will be edited out. And I don't. Do we have? We have no watchers. Okay. Looks like Tamara tried to call me. Maybe. Okay. I don't know. Anyway, it's from a WhatsApp call, so it wasn't one of you guys, was it? Okay.
No.
Okay.
No, somebody wanting you to buy some crypto, probably.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Did we hit all of our topics? Here is real quick. I found him from earlier, and I accidentally stopped sharing the screen. I want to share this, and then I have to go back here and actually add it to the stage. It's so when you okay. Anyway, here he is. His name is Gerard. He's not Polish. He's Czech. So forgive me, Gerard. He lives in Prague, but he every day is finding folks that teachers, and then so they're cataloged just by he shares their picture and shares their story. But that's been his whole deal is cataloging the war crimes. So there's people taking notes.
This is going to be very important later on because there's a second wave of justice that will the historical wave of justice is also something we need to plan for and document for.
Yes.
We let Russia tell its own story. We didn't have any control over it during Soviet times. And we actually did our own measures to try to, counteract. There was gray zone effort by the US and NATO against Russia during Soviet times to try to counteract their own internal propaganda. But we did since then, since the collapse of the Soviet Union, I'm not aware of any efforts to correct Russia's misinformation that it tells its own people, like its role and its effectiveness in World War II. We let them just gloss over the fact that they invaded Poland in league with the Nazis. We don't ever bring that up. We just let them have their thing. And their great patriotic war is, a genocide of its own people.
Yeah.
I mean, you would go fight, and if you happened to live, you'd come home. And if you were considered to be in any way dangerous or telling the truth of what happened at the front, you were sent to the gulags.
There were. So it began with Stalin in the 32-33 year with Holodomor, which we had an event here in Dallas at the Holocaust Museum, both commemorating and informing people about, because it happened right before the ever so notorious Holocaust of the Jews, which was very horrible, but just as equally as many people, Ukrainians, died by being starved to death in Holodomor in 1 year, when Stalin basically sealed up the villages, took all their food, and then shipped the grain to Russia to sell to the United States, because the United States was experiencing the Dust Bowl. So the United States' breadbasket was down, and Russia, Stalin wanted to profit from that. So both to starve Ukraine and get them to submit and become his Soviet person, rather than Ukrainian or Russian. He wanted Soviets. He didn't want any national identity except for the Soviet person. Those two reasons, he decided, I'm just going to starve the Ukrainian people for a year. And something like 7 million people died from that. It was, if you could find a grain of food, picked up a piece of grain off the ground that had been left behind, they would shoot you. So you were either starved or shot. And how anyone survived it, I don't quite understand. But some of the stories that were told was they would boil boots, leather boots, and the leather that they would get in the water would put nutrition a little bit in the water, and they could get a little bit of nutrition that way. Is one example. And then Ukraine has been that in-between battleground ever since. Of course, the Nazis let them participate in that Holocaust, which was horrible. But that after that ended, it continued for Ukrainians in that their partisans that were fighting against the Nazis suddenly had to fight against the Soviets as well, because if you were a certain kind of person, you were not welcome as a Russian, or a Soviet. But yeah, and then they've been revising all of that history.
Which we get to see them do it in real time with this war. We get to see their propaganda machine churn out in real time what their narrative will be going forward in this special military operation, to conquer the Nazis in Ukraine and defeat NATO. That's their narrative, and we don't do enough public diplomacy to fight that narrative. That's one of the things that
Are they still calling it that, even though they're negotiating for peace?
Yeah, they're still calling it that, and I don't understand why Western leaders don't do more to call out excuse my language, the horse shit that just permeates out of Russia, and it takes hold because of we didn't have this in World War II. We didn't have the internet and social media. We didn't have something that Russia and China are very good at exploiting. We didn't have them using our freedom against us in the way that they can do it now. And so our leaders just don't react in the way that they should. They don't call Putin who he is because they're scared of him, and they just don't.
Or they join him.
Worse still. So I don't understand how that works. Well, the good news is that midterms are coming up, and we don't have much longer to worry about that. Three more years in the grand scheme of history is not that long a time. So, but anyway, it bothers me that we don't do that. But Zelensky today did a great piece of propaganda. A week ago, Gerasimov sat down in front of Putin and said, "Hey, we took Kupiansk." And then Zelensky this morning shows up in Kupiansk in a just fantastic hold my beer moment that said, "Hey, you did not take Kupiansk. I'm standing in Kupiansk," which really shows it shows not only the difference between him and Putin, but also the difference between him and Trump. It really makes him look like a very unique world leader, because people are desperate for some leader to rally behind. That's why so many people like Zelensky. Zelensky is a very flawed human being, so let's not get that wrong. But people are desperate for someone to rally behind, and so many people have started to rally behind Zelensky. And this was one of those moments that people look for, and he gave it to them.
And what you said there is you used the word propaganda, and a lot of people, including me, sometimes uses propaganda, the word, as kind of a dirty word, meaning a negative thing. But if you ever go into the National Mall and see the Iwo Jima Memorial, or you even think of that picture, it can be an extremely positive thing. It doesn't have it can often be kind of staged. I mean, the popular picture of the Iwo Jima flag raising was like the second or third try to get the perfect picture, when the actual first raising and the actual battlefield event had already happened several hours ago. But that doesn't matter in the scheme of things. Of when you talk positive propaganda, you can use the truth, but also make it legendary, is what I would say. So when you're creating a legend, which is about, I would say an ideology that doesn't promote war crimes, maybe that is a pretty good ideology to have a positive propaganda around, as a baseline. Then it can be a very positive thing. And America is not always we've been fighting for the ideology that we claim to be fighting for when we're fighting a war, but most of the time the soldiers are.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my little.
Well, I mean, it starts small. That sort of thing starts small. It's important when you're, one of the first things every military does is it others the enemy. And something small, like instead of saying they're Japanese, they're Japs. Instead of Germans, they're Jerrys or Krauts. Instead of Somalis, they're Skinnies, they're Hajis, they're whatever. It starts small, but that othering is very important for militaries, and then it rises up from there. Ukrainians are Khokhos, to the Russians.
In this war, the Russians are orcs,
and the Russians were orcs. Yeah. So it starts with that. That's a very psychological, small thing, but it's very important. And it actually comes back into war crimes in that, these are people committing these war crimes. And it's important to understand that as much as we would like to think that we would never do such a thing, the academics side of it and the research side of it suggests otherwise.
Yeah.
It suggests that we are all capable of absolutely horrific things.
And dehumanizing others.
Yeah. And it's not hard to go from your neighbor who let you borrow his lawnmower to the guy who's turning you over to the secret police that he knows are going to take you and your family and torture them to death. That is not a big jump.
No. Nope. And awareness of it is the first start. So hopefully people will visit that QR code and coming out. We're not expecting large crowds, but small crowds can lead to more information for larger ones. And so coming out and support us, or if you can't make it, share the QR code up there in the top, or humansafari.org should be really easy to remember. Tell us where we can find both of you guys on the socials. And Charlie, you go first. I don't have a banner to your other podcasts, but
I mean, they're not war related at all, but you can just Google.
But they're real important for other subjects.
That's probably valid. One of them's about caregiving for someone with cancer or dementia. In my case, it was both. So I have a podcast series called Us at Our Worst. You can just Google that, Us at Our Worst podcast. And then the other one is called the Iowa Prairie Documentary Project. And some of that's video and some of it's podcast. And that's all about seeing how humans occupy the land in an extractive fashion as seen through the lens of the state boundaries of Iowa. So in brief, those are the two podcasts.
Okay. I just subscribed to one of them.
Okay.
Let's see here. I will real quick show everyone this. There you go. Can be found on YouTube. Is this it?
Yes.
Okay.
Some of them, there's only a few that are videos on YouTube. And then I stopped doing video and podcast. And so all of them can be found over on the, on pretty much any listening app as a podcast. So, you can find your way through the YouTube channel to the podcast channels. There's links.
The pros say wherever you get your podcasts, which for this one is you find me on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Spotify specifically. And for those of you that were, if anyone is listening on Spotify, I know there's a lot of visuals that I used, so try to get better about that. But let me know. Yeah, but I think we kind of well described what we were looking at this time in terms of ships blowing up and small little drones. So
imagine a ship on fire. That's what we're
yes. We had lots of ships on fire. The websites are mentioned, so you can go to them. But there is, it's hard to memorialize people without seeing their faces. So I do that here as well. And any other closing thoughts from you both?
No, just if you can go to the charity, which is giveuao.org. So that's giveuao.org. Or I encourage you to go to our Instagram, which is at giveuao. And because there we update the Instagram, we don't really update the website. We're horrible, just like everybody else with updating websites. But the Instagram is updated often, and you can see if you do donate, that's where you will see where your money goes.
Outstanding. And I also put, while you were pitching that, the QR code now on the screen goes to giveuao.org. So anyone watching this on YouTube or Facebook will be able to go that way as well. So,
and if you want to hear me scream into the abyss, well, not hear, but read me scream into the abyss, you can go to my Substack, which is researchingukraine.substack.com.
People are going to start figuring out that Substack is a good place to go for news, and I'll pitch it real quick as a fellow stacker. You get in your news feeds, your 24-hour news cycle. Everybody's sick of it. There's places like ground.news where you can go to help navigate media sources. But if you're really looking for the independent journalists that can just write whenever they figure something out, and they do a really good job of sharing their sources, and you can help them out just like on a Patreon by subscribing sometimes for a little bit of money. Some of these folks that have joined it are people that like Terry Moran, who, and Lev Parnas, and you can find all these journalists that really left the 24-hour news cycle, and they aren't trying to go on Twitter or do their own, they're not trying to grandstand, in other words, but they're sharing with you the real news. There's folks like that, and then there's the little guys you never heard of that'll find the stories that you've never heard of, like Ben Cook. And so encourage people to check out Substack if you have not. So, all right, well, that will be our show for today. And as always, I always say glory to those who defend the Constitution of the United States. I like to say Slava Ukraini, but this show is called Glory to the Heroes. So Heroyam Slava. And I will toast with a Red Bull this time because it's still morning.
Toast with coffee.
Coffee. All right. I'm going to end the stream, and you guys can stick around for a second if you want.
Yep.
Let's see. End stream. All right.